This is On The Wire, Racing TV's podcast for the best racing previews in association with Bar One Racing.
Hello and welcome to On The Wire. It's all about the Irish Oaks this weekend, but it's also all about Galileo, the death of the legendary stallion on Saturday. And we're going to reflect on a brilliant 4-1 winning nap, which extended Fran's unbelievable recent run of 2 wins in a row. Will Riley's reign of terror is over as Johnny Mack from the sponsors Bar One is back in the house. And we also have Dukey here to discuss everything about his third date, Dukey, which apparently didn't go that well.
Well, it just didn't happen, Johnny. I mean, I wasn't heartbroken. I think I told you the last time I tried to kiss her goodbye after I walked her to her taxi, and she said no, thanks. But I said I'll get in touch with you after you come back from your cycling holiday, and I just didn't bother because in the interim I realised that when I asked her, could I kiss her goodnight? Post-COVID, what you're effectively asking a single woman is, can I give you a viral load? And is it any wonder that she would blanch at that suggestion? So basically,
I'm just not sure about that take on it, to be honest. I think that's a very, very selective way of looking at her refusing to kiss you.
Well, I just well, look at this face, Johnny. My face is my fortune. You know what I mean? Like, how's she going to turn that down? She's only human. So it's obviously COVID related. Has to be.
Only human trained by Jessica Harrington, for whom Fran Berry rode many times. Fran, dialing in live from Killarney, County Kerry.
Yeah, on a little bit of a mini break with the family. I was here Tuesday for RTV, obviously, and we just decided to stay on, and it's been really nice, actually, yeah.
She must be absolutely delighted now that you're taking time out to do a podcast from the hotel room.
I think they are. Everybody's happy just to have a bit of peace from me, Johnny, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. How are you, John McDonald?
Yeah, good, Johnny. Good.
What's going on? You're back in the house.
I'm back in the house. Yeah, a couple of days off, and a couple of days off next week as well. So I'm going to enjoy the good weather.
Before we get to Galileo, let's reflect on the naps from last week. Starting with you, Dukey. Rodney, you plonker pretty much.
Yes, very disappointing performance from Rodney. He was quite weak in the betting, but I wasn't massively worried about that because he was quite weak in the betting before winning in Limerick. Travelled pretty well on the pace, settled quite well actually, which I was encouraged by, but found nothing. So another disappointing nap. But
there's nothing better, arguably, than a horse who drifts quite markedly in the betting and wins like he was backed like a good thing, which was the case with Ottoman Empire. He just becomes more likeable with every day, Fran, and your legion of fans were rewarded at 4-1.
Yeah, I actually backed him at 5-2, and I was happy at that in the morning, and was again offered it with the kids and that, and I got a text, and said he'd won up in Western Lakes, and we got 4-1's BOG, so it couldn't be better, Johnny. And I told you after Limerick we had to go short to get a winner back on the Naps table, and that won, and nice to get 2 in a row.
You're absolutely flying it, and the kids all got ice cream, I presume. Pizza, beautiful. My nap was April's Joy, who was 4th, just didn't quite have the pace to beat Frano. Possibly named after Fran Berry, who's turned into actually something of a reliable horse. She won quite well. It's a decent run from April's Joy. I, of course, backed it each way. It was just done for 3rd. Art of Unity in 6th for Will. Johnny Mack, are you going to, I guess, talk about your representative's horse ran well in 6th, albeit 11-2?
Yeah, I must admit I didn't see the race now, but I will put that up, Art of Unity. I think he was quite confident with it, but no, it didn't collect.
If there's one thing Will loves, he must have mentioned Dundalk about 12 times on the podcast last weekend, despite the fact that Dundalk didn't feature in the show as well. So I presume he turned up for the epic July the 12th meeting when all the Northern Brethren come down to escape the marches.
He wasn't there. I didn't see him. I think he's away. He's on annual leave this week, but I'm not sure what he's up to. But he wasn't in Dundalk. John
furnishing us with a load of information on Will's general well-being over the last week. Right. This is where we have to get to Galileo. Fran Berry, this news was kind of leaked somewhat like around, I don't know, in the morning on Saturday. I was a bit disappointed that it took Coolmore till about 3:30 to tweet about it. The rumour had been going around that he passed away. Actually, before I get to Fran, let's look back on Galileo winning the Derby in 2001.
Here's Galileo now on the outside, moving up the foot, out the big challenge, followed then by Dilshan, Future Sandhurst. Golan is now being popped the question and storming home, but it's Galileo who's gone for home, a furlong and a half out. He's kicked 2 lengths in front, battling on as Mr. Combustible, followed by Golan, who's now starting to fly. Dilshan in trouble, and then Tabug, but it's Galileo, a half furlong left to go, and Galileo it. Second is Golan, third to Boog, followed then by Mr. Combustible. Just behind them, storming home, and they're followed by Perfect Sunday, Dilshan.
Fran, what are your recollections of that derby?
It was just sensational, wasn't it? It was Golan was a Guineas winner, wasn't he? Stepping up and trip, Pat Edry riding, and Mick Canaan just, everything was safe all the way through. He travelled strongly. You never had a moment's doubt that he, if he stayed, he'd win, and he duly did. And speaking to Mick about it after, he said it was the most enjoyable or in control of a classic he ever felt. Until obviously See the Stars came along, and he did profile, Johnny, of a lot of horses to go to stud. He was obviously clearly exceptional, but whatever he done as a racehorse, he more than amplified that as a stallion, didn't he?
Yeah, Dukey, I was on to a couple of bookmakers that didn't quite remember, but I was just looking back at his the start to his career, and according to the log anyway, he opened up at 2-5 to win his Leopardstown Maiden, and I think he was sent off even money, and he won by about 15 lengths. Have you any recollection of that, or when did you start taking notice of this Galileo?
Well, I think I was probably there. I mean, there's very few Leopardstown meetings that I missed, but I don't actually. I remember watching the race back later on in his career, and then of course he was. I certainly saw him when he did the Ballysax-Derrinstown double, which was Aidan's preferred route into the Derby at the time. And as Fran mentioned, a beautifully balanced horse, travelled great in the Derby. You could call him a winner a long way out. And then he had this couple of epic duels with Fantastic Light. So he was a brilliant racehorse. That's one of my most memorable days, actually being at the races, Fantastic Light and Galileo. Because curiously enough, I may have been the only person, one of the few people there who was cheering for Fantastic Light. Because I remember Johnny Franklin was on the morning line and he said, how could any racing fan cheer against Galileo here? And my counter to that was, well, I want the 5-year-old to win, because as a racing fan, I want horses to stay in training until they're 5. However, I knew Galileo was going to retire to stud at the end of his 3-year-old career. But in hindsight, that was probably a good thing, because then there were 2 brilliant crops to come, whereas I would have kept him in training. So, but I remember cheering on Fantastic Light. That was just a brilliant race.
It was an unbelievable race, Johnny Mac. 20,000 people, give or take, at Leopardstown that day.
Yeah, I remember it well, Johnny. I actually gave him to my English teacher to win the class. He went to the Breeders' Cup Classic, didn't he?
What a student. I mean, whatever about getting grade A's for your grammar, you actually tipped a winner in a classic.
No, the Breeders' Cup Classic. I gave him to him to remember he went there, but he was beaten in the Classic. I obviously didn't factor in the...
You obviously ended up in the bookmaking industry as opposed to something involved.
I was the only lad who followed racing in school, yeah, and I gave it to my English teacher. Anyway, it went south, but I was in Naas the day he won the Derby, actually. It's a kind of a where were you then? You remember some things where you were when it happened, and I remember being in Naas in the middle of the betting ring watching his Derby, Galileo. It was some performance.
It is mad as well, Fran, that, all of these things happen kind of coincidentally, in that MV Magner goes over to the States. He's basically looking with the wealthy American owner, whose name escapes me. He's looking at yearlings. He doesn't like this yearling he's shown, who he's effectively there to see. And obviously, I imagine it was a bit more cumbersome to go to the States in the 60s or whatever, but he did it fairly regularly. And he says, well, is there anything else for me to look at? And he looks around anyway, and he sees this horse who turns out to be Nijinsky, who was by Northern Dancer, and that's how the whole thing began.
Yeah, it's remarkable how the whole thing evolved, wasn't it? And you learn something new every day. I didn't realise he was Sadler's Wells' first Derby winner as well, which definitely would have lost money on. And the way it all came through, and Galileo, when Vincent Bryan went, Sadler's Wells was gone on the way out. Coolmore had a little bit of a slump, if you like. Then Aidan O'Brien arrived in, Galileo arrives, and the next 20 years all came at the back end, Johnny, really, as regards quality. And but that's how far you got to go back for these bloodlines, isn't it? That's where it all begins.
Dukey, I wrote a piece on the website about this last weekend. He's gotten winning chasers probably over 3 miles or whatever. I think Jim Bulger had his first group winner over 6 furlongs rather, by Galileo, whose name escapes me. But I don't think I've ever seen a stallion where there's such consistency in a willingness to win. And I know, Shamie Heffernan, I think, is a brilliant judge. He spoke about this afterwards, but they nearly all morphed into one in terms of, like, a lot of them wanted middle distances, but incredible will to win and just genuine and, like, essentially all these traits that you want from a stallion, which maybe with Frankel, we're not quite there yet in terms of he might be a bit more quirky with the stock, but Galileo is just consistency and wanting to win.
Yeah, well, I mean, they'd run through walls for you. That's what Aidan said. Now, I know they come out with a lot of guff for the sales, for the stallion brochures and what have you, but that's not far off the truth. I mean, they're just, as you said, they put the head down, love the game, battle on, and obviously have a lot of quality as well. I mean, the goat, Frankel is the goat, and Galileo is the sire of the goat. So, I mean, that's massively significant as well.
You, Fran, you were kind of casting maybe some doubts about Frankel as a sire. Now, since then, things have become pretty sensational, and Hurricane Lane, an unbelievable performance in Paris as well. He's going to be a stallion in his own right. It almost looks like, if it's not St. Mark's Basilica, arriving on the scene, obviously at the end of his career this year, Frankel has more or less become the successor, has he not?
He has, yeah. It's been a sensation this year. Like when I spoke about him earlier in the year, I suppose, for the mares he got from day one, it's taken a long time. Maybe it's taken time to refine what kind of mares work with him and whatnot. But the last 2 years, he's really come of age, and in particular, the last 3 months. Hurricane Lane, big boost for the Irish Derby, wasn't it? To see the horse go and do it last night. It was great to see. Good for the race, and he is the successor, Johnny. But Juddmonte don't do big book coverings. Maybe there's only so much Frankel to go around. And, be interested to see what way Coolmore played today. Obviously, Wootton Bassett being bought last year is a big thing. And he can mix well with the Coolmore mares. And St. Mark's Basilica, we won't be seeing him in training next year, I doubt, anyway, in the back of Galileo passing.
We will get to the Juddmonte Irish Oaks, which is obviously the main feature of the show today. But I have to reflect before we get to this, lads, on the government's decision to allow 1,000 people in Galway. I don't think any particular decision has angered me more in the whole pandemic. Decisions have been made by government. Generally, I think the government has been trying to do its best. It's not really, it's a little bit out of its depth in terms of an evolving pandemic. That's grand. But Johnny Mack, Galway can effectively cater for 50,000 people. Not only that, Galway Racecourse was a centre for vaccinations. Galway Racecourse has contributed to the whole trying to end this pandemic. They're allowing 1,000 people in at the same time as they're allowing 18,000 people into Croke Park. So you have like elderly people who've gone to Galway. It was their fix every year. Couldn't go last year, which I think they'll accept was okay. But now, despite that they're double vaccinated, they've done everything they can. They've abided by everything that the government has said. They probably won't be able to get to Galway because only 1,000 people can get in.
Yeah, I think we were led to believe that that they would allow 5,000 in. And we're looking at sport all over. Wimbledon, Euros there for the last 2 and 3 weeks. Packed stadiums, and we just seem so far off the pace regarding the others. But at the same time, I think maybe HRI's hands are tied a bit. They've got away with quite a bit over the last year or so, and they just don't want to poke the bear. Maybe I'm wrong. I just think horse racing maybe got away with a bit more than others from the get-go from this time last year.
What did it get away with though?
The other sports were stopped and racing was allowed to go ahead.
But like in fairness, like Dukey, how many cases have there been from people going to the races for the last 13 months at this stage? Racing has been incredibly diligent in all of this.
Yeah, and I mean, cases don't matter anyway. Let the cases run wild. It's all about people getting sick and ended up in hospital. But I mean, you're a complex character, aren't you? It's amazing how vexed you are about this, and yet you're not vexed about a decision last night that if people want to go for a few pints and a bite to eat, they have to provide personal medical information at the door. So basically, these traitors have sold out our hard-won democratic freedoms, and you're more worried about the fact that only 1,000 people can get into the race. I mean, it's all bad, but last night was worse. Last night is one of the darkest days in the history of Ireland. Okay, well, obviously we're not a podcast to discuss, the relevant restrictions on indoor dining and boozing and whatever. And Fran, like I can appreciate this myself. If people are in a pub, the guard gets dropped or whatever. I think the pub should be open, but I'm not here to talk about that. My issue is 1,000 people at a vast racecourse outdoor in an activity that's so important to Galway, whereas they could comfortably cater for at least 5,000 people.
It doesn't make sense really. Like whatever that great street in Galway, Key Street or whatever, is going to be absolute jammers when the racing's going on. Pubs are going to be busy, restaurants. More chance of picking up infection in them theoretically than you will on a race course, and it's a huge blow for the track. It's a track that needs people, and but I was talking to a doctor last night, actually a racecourse doctor, and he said the government are just if they just came out and said they're behind in the AstraZeneca doses for the over 60s that need to be finished off, and by the end of August it'll be done, and be straight up about it instead of just hiding behind that they're a bit behind on that and making up other reasons. It doesn't make sense. But you wonder, Irish Champions Weekend, is there going to be anybody there? It's not going forward. I couldn't believe that there was 1,000 people at the Curragh Derby Day, and there's only 500 this weekend. It doesn't stack up. What, 3 weeks on?
See, what really annoys me is that you don't have any faith in your citizens, including vaccinated citizens of Galway who want to go racing, because that's something that they've done pretty much all their lives. Galway races is like no other. People go racing in Galway to meet friends, to meet people that they've seen for years and years and years. And you're telling a fella in his 70s who's double vaccinated, you can't go racing. Essentially, we don't really trust you, and just stay at home and basically get busy dying rather than get busy living. The only thing I will say is that Galway race hasn't happened yet, and if there is a bit of clout in racing in terms of like having some belief in itself, it will go to the government and say this is not good enough. It's actually a disgrace that 18,000 people can go to Croke Park and you're letting 1,000 people into a 50,000 arena in Galway, pretty much all outdoors. Let's get to Friday's racing. Fran, Killarney, you're down there. I really enjoyed the racing there this week. It's obviously the most beautiful racetrack pretty much in the world. It's jumps action Friday. Before we get to the Curragh action, do you like anything there or Kilbeggan?
No, I didn't do Friday at all, Johnny. I'll leave that to the two lads. I've done Saturday and Sunday, so there you go. So we'll wait for that. So I'll leave the two jumping cars. I'm on holiday mode at the minute.
How can you beat that, Dukey?
Well, I didn't kill myself either. Although that is a good handicap chase, the 4 o'clock in Killarney on Friday. Assemble 2 miles, 1 furlong around a sharp track. He does have a class edge on these, though. He's not beaten far in the chase, the handicap chase. The Shunter won in Cheltenham. He ran well in a couple of novice chases. Mark of 147. Gavin Bruder takes off 7. What do we think about him? Is he any good?
Yeah, he's I'm actually surprised he's still claiming 7. Have you looked at this, Johnny Mack? It's 11 runner race, cracking race. Henry de Brahmed well represented, JP well represented, the likes of Lamuzini.
Yeah, the McManus pair are interesting. Everlasting Promise, that's the horse I mentioned on this pod a few weeks ago. He returned it down Patrick. He's rated much lower over hurdles. He drifted like a barge. He was 5-4 in the morning, went off 9-4. But the suspicion was that race was being used as a prep run for Killarney. He's won, of course, in distance. He won at the August Festival last year, and I think he'll be a big player. That down Patrick run should leave him spot on. That's Everlasting Promise. And then the Bulger, we know he likes to have winners down in Killarney as well.
We all like to have winners in Killarney. I was actually lucky enough to own a horse, or part own a horse who won down there. Like Fran, you're obviously in the kingdom at the moment. One thing about the pandemic, I will say, is that I haven't been abroad since Cheltenham last year or whatever. It's made me maybe, and this is a bit of a cliche now, but it made me appreciate Ireland and all that. But I visited Kerry in West Cork. Essentially, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world.
Look, when the weather's good, it's hard to beat. A wonderful town, and West Cork is definitely on the agenda at some stage. I've never made it there, and you just forget what a good country we have here. But the weather is a big thing, and luckily this week it has been fantastic.
Fran seems to be excited about a horse by Camelot that's trained by Ger Lyons at Leopardstown this evening, and one such horse, also a filly, created history last year at the Curragh.
And after them, Yucks Any, and no feature at all from Ennis Diamond. Racing inside the final 2 furlongs, and it's no press by KN Pepper. On the rail is Passion, on the outside is Even So. Many in with chances, and Laburnum is sticking at it. Inside the final furlong and down the outside, it's Even So, who's come to hit the front in the Juddmonte Irish Oaks. And it is the year of the classics for Colin Keane and Ger Lyons. Even So has won the Juddmonte Irish Oaks from KN Pepper. Passion next ahead of Laburnum.
Fran, Even So, that actually seems a long time ago at this stage.
It does, yeah, it does. It was a great win, wasn't it, for Ger, like on the back of Siskin win the Irish Guineas, and to go there with a Coolmore owned horse, it was fantastic for him and Colin. And it's I don't know if Party House is going to do it on Saturday, but he's definitely good to see Ger going so well.
Best in the world is the Dam of Snowfall, obviously by Deep Impact. Deep Impact brings me back to the Arc, because obviously there's the day that Deep Impact should have won the Arc. The Japanese came, and as Dukey said, they backed the horse and they weren't even going to cash out when he won, just so they had the tote ticket for memorabilia. I don't know how many people will be going to the Arc this year, Fran, but the way it's shaping up, it's going to be a sensational race in terms of so much depth to it, not only from Ballydoyle, but obviously elsewhere as well. Frank will probably have a say. Presumably this filly will win the Oaks.
It's very hard to see beyond her. John will give you the betting there in a minute, but she's well odds on, and you can't see beyond her on all known form. Johnny, your biggest opposition is her stable companions, and they shouldn't be good enough. The first 4 in the betting, effectively, or 5 in the betting, I think, are Aiden's, or so that says it all. If I was to pick one to back without, I'd probably back Willow without, and if there's a market on that, I'd be interested in her. I think she's of the 4 opposition to the rest of them. I think up to a 1.5 miles on good ground on the back of an ace when she could be interesting, but it's a race to watch and see if Snowfall just confirms what she done in Epsom and in the Moosedoran.
A 16-length win at Epsom, and obviously Johnny Mackey was encouraging to see Santa Barbara win, part of a double for Aidan O'Brien in the US last Saturday. Fran was I think hoping for some sort of a 4 even money monkey bets as a sort of a promotion for this from Bar 1, but I think that actually fell at the first.
Not a chance. But check out the socials Saturday morning. I think the lads might have something planned for Saturday. She's remarkable, isn't she? The fact she ran 7 or 8 times last year, and now there's this sudden improvement from her. It's a bit Peeping Fawn-esque, isn't it? That filly they had a few years ago. This improvement has come from nowhere.
It is mad, Dukey, because she went to say when she won, I kind of half followed her too, because I love Deep Impact, and she was kind of a pacemaker in a few races. But after she won her maiden, she finished 4th, beating 5 lengths behind Shale, 5th at the Curragh behind Pretty Gorgeous, beating 12 lengths, 9th behind Shale, beating 10 lengths, and 8th behind Pretty Gorgeous at Newmarket, beating 12 lengths, which is less than what she won the Oaks by at Epsom. How do you make sense of that, Dukey?
Well, it's very hard to make sense of it, but I suppose it's just variance. I mean, Johnny Mack mentioned Peeping Fawn. Aidan O'Brien has so many regally bred fillies that some of them are just going to come to themselves later in life, and clearly that's the case with this filly. But what's interesting to me is that, of course, Aidan loves to run his horses, and it didn't do her any harm, did it? It's like she wasn't either physically or mentally able to perform at a high level last year, but getting beaten in those races didn't do her any harm, hardened her up, if anything. Now she's come to herself, I imagine, and it's a weak division, I think, this year, the 3-year-old fillies in general, but obviously she could be exceptional and will win this with her head in her chest, because they can do anything they want with her tactically as well. If they want to jump out in front like the Musadora, they can do that, or they can hold her up and get something else to make the pace for her.
Would she be your idea of the Arc winner at the moment?
Oh, I mean, my idea of the Arc winner at the moment is Love. But as you mentioned, there's so many contenders. But I think Love is an exceptional filly. It's just a hunch now, because you could argue she hasn't actually beaten all that much. But I think she's a brilliant filly, and I think, assuming the ground is okay, is quick enough for them to let her take her chance, I think she'll show everyone how good she is.
We're probably all in agreement that Snowfall will win the Irish Oaks, but in fairness, Fran, this is a cracking card. The Scurry handicap of 100 grand, the 6 furlongs and the 63 yards. Obviously the Anglesey Stakes as well. Very good sprint handicap before that. What's sure to be a fascinating maiden as well, with a couple of horses, Shark Bay by Australia and Manuel Corday by Teofilo, a renewal rivalry after an interesting clash 3 weeks ago. What do you like in the card?
Yeah, that first race, them 2 2-year-olds mentioned, Jim Budge's one was Corday was very well backed on debut into favouritism and shaped well. Shark Bay came home well. Good interest here. The 2 of them progressed, Johnny, and they would look to ones in that first race. Beauty Inspire in the 3rd race. Can't wait to see him back out. He was awesome in his maiden win on the Friday Derby weekend. He's got a declaration in the Anglesey Stakes. He's drawn and stalled 5, and there's 6 runners. If he's as good as he looked on debut, he should be hard to beat. His opposition don't look vintage. And in the Scurries, a big fan of Gulliver. He's obviously favourite at the minute, and or near enough favourite anyway, second favourite 7-1. He's a great course record. He's ran there 4 times at the Curragh. He was only beat by Romantic Proposal in the race last year. And the previous year, Irish Champions Weekend, he ran well in the Bowl Lad Stakes. Loves a fast gallop. If he gets it, Gulliver for me is interesting. Gavin Ryan is actually booked to ride.
Yeah, the late great Leslie Nielsen in Naked Gun. It was said to him, Frank Drebin, obviously, you sure know your boxing, Frank? And he said, all I know is never bet on the white guy and never bet on an Irish sprinter in a sprint handicap, Johnny Mack. And that's why Francis Gulliver, I guess.
Yeah, that looks wide open, that Scurry. I'd imagine we'll be paying extra places in that. But yeah, it's a super card. Maidens on Oaks weekend, they always tend to be really, really good, don't they?
Yeah, and it's just really good maidens in general. The last week or two, I think a fascinating one at Leopardstown tonight. My Nap will run in the ladies' derby. It's not a particularly original selection, but I'll wait for that. Dukey, what do you like in the card?
Well, again, like you lads have probably covered it all, but I'm interested to see there's an Almanzor. Joseph O'Brien has a horse by Almanzor in that opening maiden, so I'm going on Saturday. So I'll be curious to see him. He may be the first son of Almanzor to appear on the track in Ireland. For all, Shark Bay should win that. Admiral D ran perfectly respectably over 5 furlongs in Royal Ascot. The extra furlong should help here, and he looks fairly treated. Fran mentioned Beauty Inspire. I mean, you could be a shrewd about this and say, oh, Beauty Inspire is going to be over bet. We should be taking him on, but I won't be taking him on because, like Fran, I was really taken with his debut win. The 250, the sprint is an absolute cracker. Logo Hunter, fast improving, quicker ground here than he's been racing on. But I don't really see any reason why quicker ground will be a problem for him, and he might just make his early boot tell on this track. Gulliver, I can see Gulliver. You're probably going to mention Subtanian. He's nearly impossible to get away from, and that was about it.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Fran, you have done a little bit of research. We don't have Sunday's cards yet at the moment, but again, this is an intriguing card. It's Curragh. We obviously have the Kilboy Stakes, which is Group 2. Very, very strong entry in that actually as well. And a couple of other fascinating races as well. What do you like?
Yeah, just on the maidens at the minute, you talk about Almanzor having his first runner potentially for Joseph O'Brien. Ulysses had a winner during the week for Donnacha O'Brien as well in Killarney. Nice horse, and a good sign for a sire like him to get a winner at this stage of the year at least, and good start to him. And Johnny Murtagh's team could not be going better. He 3 winners on Monday to 2 meetings and 2 the day before. Big weekend again for him, but Curragh, should I say, in the first race, she ran very well on debut behind Discovery's, staying on well to be 4th. He's yet to have a winner for the Aga Khan. He'd one just beat at Killarney on Monday, and that could be his first winner for that big owner in the first race. Order of Australia, he takes a big, if he's declared, takes a big drop down in class for Minstrel, Breeders' Cup winner. Maybe he's down in trip. Could potentially drop to 7 furlongs, which, for horse that was winning over 1.5 miles last year, running over 1.5 miles. It's fascinating to see, and it's short of his best. But looking at the opposition, Sir William Bruce is a standout in that 5 o'clock race. Looking at what's around him, Star Harbor unlikely to run. I'd imagine having won last night, and the rest of them don't look all that strong. For all the Wild Dollar is a horse of Eddie Harty's whose form has worked out well. He got that maiden in the stewards room on Guinea's weekend, and the horse lost at 1, and the third has won since. So that's strong form. Rating of 87 for Eddie Harty's horse. Yeah,
and that form is working out, as you say. Winner in Killarney that was demoted obviously during the week. Concert Hall, a horse by Dubawe who was very well backed at Fairyhouse recently, might appear in the 135. That's the fillies maiden. It'd be interesting to see. She was backed into odds on that occasion. Very well bred horse. Let's get to the naps, starting with you, Dukey.
My nap, well, Fran has mentioned this already, in the 4 o'clock on Saturday, Gulliver, who I backed in the Scurries last year when he was just nutted by none other than Romantic Proposal. He's £4 lower here, coming off a cracking effort in the Wokingham at Royal Ascot. He's inclined to miss the break, which can be frustrating. He didn't miss it in Ascot, but hopefully the boy Ryan, who's ridden him before, will be all over. There's plenty of pace in this race. You're going to be getting extra places. Granted, he's only going to be about 7 or 8 to 1, but really hard to kick out of the frame, and he's a right good chance of winning.
Fran?
Beauty Inspire if he's better than odds on, but I'd more look at it, he probably will be odds on. So we'll look elsewhere, Johnny. I'll put up Sir William Bruce in that 5 o'clock on Sunday, should he be declared. I think even back to 10 furlongs, he's probably better than a handicapper.
Johnny Mac?
I'm going to put up Johnny Martin's filly Measure of Magic to confirm that Navan form with Logo Hunter in the Sapphire Stakes. Before I go, Johnny, just the offers for the weekend. You might forget. Price boosting the Haydock and the Curragh. Enhanced prices on all the favourites across all channels.
What do you mean I might forget? You hadn't even told me. Bloody hell. Anyway, there are the offers. And as Johnny Mac says, keep an eye out for the socials, see what sort of specials are on offer at the Curragh on Saturday, because I don't know how the enticed punters bet on the Oaks unless you're putting Snowfall into some sort of McCune, but maybe we'll find a way. My nap, Dukey kind of preempted it there. I actually feel a bit bad now. Zafani and a horse I backed several times over hurdles, running off 83. You can see during the week when the likes of your Fred Winter horse goes off a crazy short price at Killarney that it doesn't always work out, but this horse over 1.5 miles, I think he's absolutely bulletproof. Under Jody Town, and Fran, enjoyed the rest of Killarney.
Will do, yeah. Looking forward to the weekend. It's a nice break, but a great race of the weekend. So best of both worlds, thank God.
I'm trying to repair your relationship after abandoning your family over the last hour to do this podcast.
I'm going on a bike and I'm going swimming later, so that should make up for it.
Any swims planned for you, Dukey?
Yes, I'm going to Leopardstown tonight. So the boy Lynch is picking me up at 3 o'clock. High tide is at 4 o'clock. So it's a relatively tight window I have, but I think I'll be able to get in at about 2 p.m. and then head off to Leopardstown. Sun is shining. These are dark times, Johnny. You've already touched on that, but let's try to stay positive. Let's go racing and just power on through.
Are you going all in on Japan then, Dukey? Yeah.
Stop it. You just have to watch Japan. I couldn't back him, but at the same time I couldn't oppose him. I have a docket at home somewhere for Japan in the Arc last year, and I don't have it actually because I had to bring it in to get my money back because it was refunded because of the feed debacle. But I mean, I should have really given that money to charity, shouldn't I? He's just such a frustrating horse. But he maybe get it done. Do you think you get it done tonight?
It's interesting dropping to 1 mile, drawing one around there. If he could have traffic problems, that'd be. It's fascinating to see him down a trip, and could get tactical. I'd be happy to chance Maker Kings against him. Might get on the pace just as a poke, and in case Japan gets a bit of rough racing down the inside or whatever. Yeah.
Just on that, Fran, before we finish up, you nearly forget this now, but do you remember when the Curragh was being redeveloped and Coolmore were so insistent that the Irish Derby had to be run at the Curragh that you couldn't relocate all these races to Leopardstown? But it's actually mad for how, like, for quality of Leopardstown, and even in small fields, how many times horses are unlucky in running.
Look, it's the most tactical track in the world, really. You know, it's a beautiful track to look at, beautiful track to ride, but it takes years to get the hang of. Genuinely does, and still mightn't work. We've seen Christoph Sumi on Azamur. We've seen Daryl Holland on Falbrav. You know, guys who come in for the day. It's very inviting off the home turn. It might open up momentarily, and you think you're going to get a run between the horses. The door often shuts quickly. It can be, and you don't have a lot of time to get going again should you get checked.
Johnny Mac, we've spoken about Japan. We've spoken about Deep Impact. Who was from Japan. We've spoken about Galileo. We've spoken about his race against Fantastic Light, one of the best champion stakes ever run. Fran now has mentioned Falbrav, one of my favourite races of all time. Daryl Holland obviously came for the day, but left with his tail between his legs, rather. And Johnny Mac, if there were one man who did get the hang of Leopardstown, it was F.M. Berry. He used to come about 27 wide because he knew he was talking to the Larkin wire beforehand, and Larkin said essentially, this is where the fastest of the ground is, Fran. Larkin had probably cycled it actually before racing.
He put down he ruined it for me. He started putting down an outside rail, and so I couldn't go any wider. So
and subsequently retired. Johnny Mac, any final thoughts?
No, nothing at all, Johnny. Just looking forward to the weekend.
What a brilliant note actually to end the podcast, lads. Thanks a million. Thank you for tuning in to On The Wire Racing TV's podcast, brought to you in association with Bar One Racing. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a review, give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And this podcast is available on video format in all its glory on YouTube. And you'll also find us on racingtv.com and on audio at Apple Podcasts, Spotify and numerous other platforms. Don't forget, if you are having a bet this weekend following any of our selections or so on, Gamble responsibly and do visit begambleaware.org for more information.